Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Qdabra's weekly webinar. I'm Joanne and I'm a software tester at Qdabra. Also joining us today is our support lead, Kirby Laborte. So just a quick audio check here. Kirby, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. So today we're going to show how you can add form logic to your forms to validate file attachments before uploading them to a SharePoint document library. But before we start the presentation, I will ask some questions first. So launching my poll here. So the first question is, do you have file attachments in your forms? Could be yes, no, or you're not sure. Yes, so 67% or 50% answered yes, 50% no. Okay. Some are still answering. Okay, 60% no, yes. All right. So I guess most of you are using file attachments. My next question is, do you have forms that are opening slow because of file attachment size? No, okay, maybe. 60% said no, 40% said maybe. So maybe you're not sure, but some forms may become slow because the file attachments can easily put a heavy load on the form. So let me share back my screen here. Close the poll. Kirby, can you see my screen? My
Yes.
slide? Okay, good. So if you're interested in making your attachment process efficient and smarter, you can benefit from this technique. So our topic is how to process attachments in your forms. And it will help you, these features we'll talk about today will help you reduce your form size. You can add a drag and drop feature so you can drop multiple files to the attachment fields. And you can validate files to prevent invalid formats and simply just to help you organize your files. So if you'd like to have one of these features, then this one is definitely a good topic. And our demo is actually a combination of these commands, the Curls commands to the left. We have had get attachment attribute, create SharePoint folder, save to SharePoint commands for several years now, and the prompt command for quite some time. But the register multi-drop command is something new in Forms Viewer, and maybe you haven't used it yet. So this is a cool addition to this technique because it allows for dropping multiple files in attachment control. So basically, our demo today is a 5-step process. First, we'll show you how you can add the multi-drop feature, the register multi-drop feature to your form. Then we'll show you how to add validation checks. First, to check for the file type, because some form maybe requires a certain file type, right? Like if your forms require only PDFs or picture files only, then we can add some validation to your form. And the next validation that we can add is to check for the file name. Maybe you don't want invalid characters in the file name. You can also prevent your users from uploading those file attachments with invalid characters in them. And also, we can also add a validation to check for the file size, not on a per item line, but to check if the sum of the file size the total of the file attachment size exceeds a certain limit, like 5 megabytes or so. And lastly, if everything is good, then you can add the save to SharePoint command to save the files to SharePoint. So without further ado, I'll proceed to my demo now. So I'm using the expense report form. Some of you may already be familiar with this form. And sorry about that. Looks like my internet is slow today. Let's see. Okay, just need to refresh. All right, so I'm opening my expense report. And I have a repeating section here for entering my expense items. And normally users would click on the plus button here to enter the items. And the file attachment is this control here for attaching the receipts. And if users would like to add multiple receipts, it would take a while to enter them one by one, right, and attach the files one by one. So before I demo the multi-drop feature, let me show you what's happening in the background here. Okay, so this is my debug section, just looking for the register multi-drop command that I'm running on load. So this is the one. So it just means that I have registered this file control to be a multi-drop control in Forms Viewer. So let me show you how that works. I have some files here, and if I drop like 3 files in that attachment field, it will add those files for me, and it did add the rows automatically. I didn't have to click insert for those lines. So that's how it basically works, and it's very easy to add in your form. As you can see in Forms Viewer, you can just go to the Forms Designer. Some of you may have already used this feature in Forms Viewer, and just look for the register multi-drop command, and here you can see what parameters are required. So the required parameter is repeater. So in your main data source, just select the repeating section. So in my case, it's the item group here. And select the attachment file. Oh, this one. And that's it. Copy that to clipboard and paste that somewhere in your form. You can add that to the finish loading node if you want it to automatically be a multi-drop on load, or if you want it to happen on button click, then you can also add that rule in your button. So that's how the multi-drop works. I'm I will delete this line so I can demo the next feature for you. So next is validation for the file. So we will validate for the file type first. Okay, so the file types that I'm allowing in the form are PDFs, JPEG, and PNG files only. So let's try to drop an Excel file here, and it will bring this error. It will say only PDF, PNG, and JPEG files are allowed. And if I use the multi-drop function here, I'm dropping two files there, PowerPoint and Word document, so it will show the same error. So that's checking for the file type. And in my Q rules debug section here, you can see that our get attachment attribute is getting the attribute of the file attachment, which is extension, ext, short for extension. So it's getting that. And in our last case, it did recognize it's not a valid attachment file because it is Excel, PowerPoint, and Word. Yep. So let's try the next validation check, which is checking for the file name. So I'm not allowing invalid characters for my receipt. Oh, let's see. So this is a PDF file, right? So let's see if it will show that error. Yep. So it's telling us that this file attachment, although it's PDF, it's not allowed because it's containing those invalid characters in it. Okay, and then one last check is the file size. Okay, and by the way, before you hit submit, it's also displaying the other validation checks here. It's also telling us that other fields are not filled out. And it still won't allow us because of this. Okay, so the next validation for the file attachment is checking for the total sum of all the attachments. So the limit for this form that I've set is 5 megabytes only. Okay, so I have a 3 megabyte PDF here. Okay, so it recognizes it's a valid file, right? But I will add more. So it's now 6 megabyte. Okay. See? Okay, that's sweet. Is it running? Okay. Maybe I have increased my limit there. Let's just repeat it. Okay. So it's checking the file size, which is in bytes format. So the number is huge. Kirby, can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So maybe I have increased the size for some reason. So it's now, but still a 5 MB in my prompt. So it shows a warning for my attached receipts there. And it's actually computing the total size of the receipts here. All right, so that is for the for checking the file size. And so now let's try to submit valid files. This time you want the form to submit. Trying to put random values here. Okay, and I will submit. And in a few seconds, my folder here in SharePoint will contain these attachments. Okay, there you go. And these two are the ones I submitted a while ago. Yep. And so the save to SharePoint command works together with the create SharePoint folder. So it created this folder for me with my name and date, date format here. And also it's prepending the date time in the file attachment name here. So it's generating a unique name for you. So you can see, so it's more organized. And if I click OK here, my attachments are now converted to links, and I can click on them and view them in the browser. Okay. Like that. Yeah. So basically that's how the process works. Okay. I'm now going to show you how I added the form logic in the form. So I've already shown you the register multi-drop. It's added here in my finish loading this rule here. So I just pasted the command here. Then for the file validation, it's happening in this file attachment control. So I have a trigger here to trigger a field in the repeating section here. So it's setting the value, the trigger value to go, and it's running this 3 sets of rules here to check first for the file type, and it's using the get attachment attribute. So I have the XPath of the file attachment there, and I'm using the count field just to determine the current row. So this command is working in a loop process, and I'm using the parameter attribute, and I'm putting the value ext, which is short for extension, checking for the extension of the file. And I'm placing the result value to the file type node, which is also an attribute under the file attachment field. And it's the same for the file name, still get attachment attribute, but this time I'm using the attribute name to get the file name, check if it has invalid characters. And I'm placing the result value in the file name attribute, and also the same for the file size, but here I'm using the size value for the attribute. And to check for the errors, I have here, so for the file type, so I have condition if file type is not PDF, not PNG, not JPEG, it will show this error. And so you can also customize this depending on your form requirements. And for file name, I also have this condition here. If it does not match some pattern, then it will show this error. For the file size, check it's running in the submit button. And here you check the pre-submit field under form logic, data connection. You can check out this rule called file size limit exceeded. So it's checking if the sum of all occurrences of file size, so this file size attribute under files field, sum of it is greater than or equal to this number, should be entered as number. So this is in bytes format, equivalent to 5 megabytes. It will show this prompt. So if that condition turns true, it will show this prompt, which tells the user that his receipts exceed the 5 MB total size limit. And it's also easy to build a prompt command. You can also go to your Forms Designer and build your prompt command there. So that's it for this form logic. There's not much technicalities, just simple commands that you can add to your form. So let me go back to my slide here. Okay, so just a quick recap. So we added a multi-drop feature to our file attachment control, and the command is actually called register multi-drop, and it enables multi-drop support for attachment control, and it can be enabled on form load or on button click, depends on where you want it to happen. And it also allows for enabling on specific table in case of if you have repeating parent-child nodes, and you can specify which table you want to apply the multi-drop settings using XPath filters. Then we added a check for the file type using the get attachment attribute, and this command allows you the ability to obtain attributes from an attachment in a file control, and we use this ATTR parameter, short for attribute, and we use the value extension, XT. And the key here is we added a trigger field in the repeating section so that it runs the commands in a loop setting or process, so that it checks for each file attachment. Then also for the file name, we use the same command, only this time we added the name value for the attribute parameter. And for file size, it's also the same. Just use the size value for your attribute parameter. And for checking for the file attachment size, you can add the rule in the submit button to check if the sum of all file attachments exceeds the limit that you require in your form. And if that condition is true, then you can add a prompt to show to your users. And finally is save to SharePoint. So save to SharePoint can save a file, a set of files, or even an image or set of images to a SharePoint document library, and I'm guessing some of you may have already used this in your forms. And for this, you need to use the parameter URL XPath for URL to specify the XPath to your SharePoint library, and XPath parameter to specify the XPath to your file or picture attachment. And this works together with create SharePoint folder command. If you want to learn more about it, you can build it using the command builder. Just I'll look for the save to SharePoint command, and you can easily build your command here. And if you want to learn more, you can also watch day 3 of Forms Viewer training last April. And this is the link here in our YouTube channel. So that's it for my demo. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in chat, and I will read your questions. In the meantime, I will hand the mic over to Kirby so she can talk a little bit more about Forms Viewer. Kirby?
All right, thank you, Joanne. So I'd like to talk briefly about Forms Viewer. It's the only app out there that reads and writes InfoPath file formats. And we built this app for those who are looking for a quick and painless way to migrate InfoPath forms and continue their form investment. And as you may already know, InfoPath is the primary form-based solution for SharePoint, and it has long been one of the most widely used to build complex forms. But a lot of its features has become outdated, and Microsoft is no longer investing on adding new feature updates, not to mention support for InfoPath will only last until 2026. So if you're one of those who have invested heavily in InfoPath forms, Forms Viewer is the lowest cost alternative. Instead of building again your forms from scratch, it can migrate your forms as is, which means retaining data files, the look and feel and functionality of your forms. And best of all, we've added lots of features over the years to upgrade the look and feel of your forms and make it more modern. Features like making your forms mobile responsive, generating PDF copies of your form, and even mobile authentication. So I encourage you to check our previous webinars so you can have a better idea on how these features can help you extend your forms. And we're happy to announce that we just launched Forms Viewer version 5.1. We also encourage you to check it out in the SharePoint App Store and download the free trial. If you need help with your existing form projects, or if you're planning to migrate your InfoPath forms, we're here to help. Just email us at support@qdabra.com for your concerns and questions.
Thanks, Kirby. And I was checking the chat window here. I don't see any questions. So anyway, thank you all so much for being here today. We look forward to sending you the package. And if you need help or if you have any questions on setting it up, just let us know. See you in the next webinar. Have a great day.